Codemotion.
Welcome everybody to Create More, Better, Different. My name is Jason Theodor, and I'm going to take you through a lot of information today and fairly fast. So if you want to take notes, that's great, but a lot of this will be up on the website after, so you don't have to be too frantic about it. But I'm going to go through pretty quickly because we don't have a lot of time, and normally I go through this in about 8 hours, and now I'm going to do it in 40 minutes. So just hold on to your hat. So I'm going to talk about creativity and creating things, and I think we've all heard of the creative class that's Richard Florida talks about. We've heard of how this is sometimes referred to as the age of ideas, where we've had the Bronze Age and we've had the manufacturing age, and now we're into this new age where more things are possible. It's like a new renaissance now. There's this convergence happening with technology and with language and programming and design and ideas, and they're all coming together in different ways. And it feels like if you can't be creative enough, it's hard to participate in this new sort of phase, this new age. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. My talk is called Create More, Better, Different for that exact reason. I want to help people to be able to create more stuff, to create better stuff, and create it in different ways so that it stands out. So who am I? My name is Jason Theodor, and JTED for short makes a great short Twitter handle, uses up less characters. I'm a creative director. I work at a company called Publicis in Toronto, Canada, and I've been in advertising now for about 17 years, facilitating creative ideation or helping people come up with better ideas, more ideas, and different ideas for fairly big companies. But at the same time, I decided that I needed to understand this better. I work with designers and writers. I work with programmers, both front end and back end. And I also work with producers, and I work with account developers and with clients. And every single one of those people are creative. We say, like, as a creative director working in the creative department, we like sometimes to be snobby about that and think that we sort of own creativity, but we don't. Creativity is for everybody, even the client, even the account manager. So what I'm going to show you next are excerpts from a book that I'm working on by the same title, Create More, Better, Different. And the table of contents goes something like this. What are my thoughts on creativity? I'll sort of set it up. Then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about terminology so we can all be on the same page. We're going to talk about the creative types. What kind of creative person are you? And then we'll discuss some tools or how you can look at creative practices and exercises and figure out which ones actually work right for you, which ones will actually help you as an individual get better at this. So part 0, thoughts on creativity or why I am writing this book. My mission is to demystify creativity. I want to encourage it, but I don't want people to feel like it's intimidating. I don't want people to feel intimidated by creativity. I think that creativity is what makes us innately human beings. I think it is what defines us. It is what makes us different from the rest of the creatures on this planet. And because of that, I believe that when someone says, and I come across this a lot, where I find people say, well, I'm not really a creative person, and they put themselves down about it, and that drives me crazy because I say that it's impossible. If you're alive, you're a creative person. It's kind of like I work for a client called Nike, and Nike likes to say, if you have a body, you're an athlete. And I'd say if you're a person, if you're a human being, you're creative. So I'm not here to inspire you. If that happens, that's great, but I find that many times you go to a talk and you get inspired, and then you go to the next talk and you get inspired by that, and then you go to the next talk and you're inspired by that, and you keep getting inspired, and you forget about what the first person said and the second person said, and then you leave and you go, I felt so great, and so, but now what do I do? And what I really, really want to do is transform your thinking about creativity and then enable you so that you have some tools and that you're empowered to move forward and do something more, do something better, do something different. That's my goal. Not just inspire you. I want to give you some real tools to help you change the way you think about creativity. So let's get on with it, right? What I'm going to show you is a creative framework. And I call it a framework because what I talked about before, about the terminology, the types, and the tools, we need a common structure to talk about creativity and what creativity is. So I've created my own definition, and we'll get into that in a second. And then you need personal context in this framework so that you can relate it to yourself, so you understand it from your own perspective. And then we'll talk about the classifications of tools and exercises and practices. So the terminology, types, and tools. Let's start with part one. Just going to grab a little bit of aqua. So what is creativity? Many people are under the mistaken belief that creativity is the same as originality, and they equate those things, and it's not wrong. It's more complicated than that. That's not the right answer. It's not that creativity equals originality. And creativity is also not owned by the gods. It's not owned by the geniuses and obsessed artists. Yes, they are creative, and they're very, very creative, and they might be some of the best, most creative people on the planet, but they don't own creativity. It's not just for them. It's for everybody. So our concept is flawed. As I said before, if you're human, you're creative, and creativity shouldn't be something that is intimidating or inaccessible to us mere mortals. So what do other people think about creativity? There's a host of definitions. As a matter of fact, if you look up creativity in Wikipedia, it says that nobody really owns a real definition of what creativity is. So I went, aha, I can step in there and maybe fix that problem. But we go through some of these other ideas. Jacques Maximin, a famous French chef, said that creativity means not copying. And by just saying that creativity means not copying, he inspired the famous chef Ferran Adria to sit down and go, I can't do anything the same anytime. I have to make every single dish a complete original that nobody's ever had. It's not just a combination of parts. It's got to be something completely new. So he went completely off the deep end on originality, but that's not the true total definition, not the total definition. Creativity is just connecting things, said Steve Jobs. It sounds very, very simple, and yes, he created this amazing and new ecosystem of how the iPod and the iTunes store and how the product and the software and the ecosystem all connected together. But again, that's a fairly simplistic way of looking at things. I think it's easier to start connecting things if you're a billionaire that owns a big company. But creativity is coming up with something new by letting go of convention, says Kenneth Haleman, the famous neurologist. Or creativity is effective novelty, which means it has to be something new. And I have a slight problem with the idea that everything creative has to, anytime you want to be creative, you have to do something new. It's not just about that. It's not just about new. Creativity is the ability to restructure one's understanding of a situation in a non-obvious way. Well, that sounds like a scientist. Dr. John Kunios does all kinds of research in how the brain functions during moments of insight, and he has all kinds of amazing little animations that show what the brain actually looks like when it comes up with an idea or when it solves a problem. But I think that's a little hard to understand, your ability to restructure one's understanding of a situation in a non-obvious way. I think it's close, but I don't think that it's consumer-friendly as a definition. Creativity is kind of like pornography. You know it when you see it, says Dr. Rex Young. Kind of like that definition. It's partly true. Keith Sawyer says hard work plus talent equals creativity. And I agree with the hard work part, but I think that talent sometimes comes out of hard work. So let's get to my definition. After looking and reading hundreds of books on creativity and really diving deep into all these various definitions and trying to find something that worked for me and that worked for my creative teams, I came up with this, that creativity is the act of connecting things in unexpected ways. That doesn't mean that it has to be brand new. It can just be unexpected, and it can be unexpected to you. It might not be unexpected to someone else, but it can be unexpected to you. You think back to when you were a child, or any child, playing with building blocks. And so you've got the act, you've got action. You can't have creation without action. The act of creation basically shows that you have to physically be doing something to be creative. So the action part is very, very important to get something actually done, to actually be able to practice something and get good at it. And the connection, you're building the blocks, and you start to say, oh, if I put this block on top of another block, I can make a tower. And then the unexpected thing happens is that it falls over, or you move your hand and you knock it and it spills, and that's unexpected to you. Now, you know, those of us that have been around for a while know that we've all done it, and we've seen all these other children do it, but does that mean that because we've already seen it that it's not creative? Absolutely not. So creativity doesn't mean that it has to be absolutely an original thought. It just has to be unexpected for you. So let's go into these things in detail. Action, connection, and what I call deviation, which is the unexpected. We'll talk about that in a little bit of detail. So action. So creativity grows from doing stuff, from practicing one's chosen form of expression. So the act of doing your thing over and over and over again, it allows you to create more. This is called action, or do, as I say. And practice leads to a routine, and the routine is basically making creativity become a part of your life where you're doing it every day and you're getting better and better and better as you go, but you're also making stuff, which is really important. So action is in the physical realm. Action is about breaking barriers, and those barriers are things like procrastination or laziness or distraction or all those things that prevent us from actually creating, from moving ourselves forward in terms of creativity. It's in the realm of ideation or brainstorming, and it's about quantity. It's about mass quantity. It's about doing as much as you possibly can. That's what action is about. So the act of connecting things in unexpected ways. Let's talk about connection. A connection comes from going deep and going wide, becoming an expert, but also being a polymath, I guess it's called, where you can be a jack of all trades and you can learn different disciplines. It's really dangerous to just go deep, and it's really dangerous to just go wide. Wide is sometimes too shallow, and you don't know enough about things. Going too deep means you can sometimes get myopic, and you don't have enough other types of experiences to bring together to come up with some new types of ideas. Now, I don't know if you've been in a room where you're brainstorming with people and everyone is in the same field and they all are coming up with the same ideas, and then someone comes in that's a marine biologist and the ideas suddenly change completely. So how do you go where your thoughts can associate more freely and you can come to a better big picture understanding of things? That's called connection, or glue, and association leads to understanding. And we'll get to that, what those mean in a little bit. So if action is in the physical realm, connection is more in the mental realm. It's more about learning. It's more in your mind. It's about finding a focus for things so that you can apply the stuff that you've learned in associations. It's about problem solving, and it's about quality, not quantity. It's about making sure that what you're creating is the right thing for the problem you're trying to solve, or that it connects to our society or culture or something of that nature. So now let's look at the act of connecting things in unexpected ways. So unexpection isn't a word, so I use the word deviation. Deviation is, if you look at the symbol here, the symbol of deviation is, you could look at this as being your third eye and your ability to see into other dimensions, but if you look at it as a bell curve, and these are a plotted point of data, this is the outlier data. This is that little piece that doesn't fit with the rest of things. It sits outside of it. It's a deviation in science And it means that it's a little piece of something that's not like the others, it's not status quo, and needs to be examined more. And creativity comes from free play, where you can experiment with different and alternate points of view and take unexpected paths, do things that you haven't done before. So the experimentation leads to an expression of yourself. So if we're looking at action being the physical and connection being the mental, then deviation is the spiritual or the personal dimension of creativity. And it's about overcoming the ordinary. It's about getting out of, we all have these default paths that we go to when we think about things. We have places where our brain feels the most comfortable. We have associations that we've sort of dug a big trench about, where we always march in the same direction with our thoughts. And deviation is about trying to get outside of that through experimentation and self-expression, innovation, and uniqueness. So action, which is represented by the fearless arrow, connection, represented by the sort of infinite loop of ideas and thoughts, and deviation, represented by this wandering eye or this idea of outlier data. So if you buy this, if you accept the fact that creativity is the act of connecting things in unexpected ways, then creativity is made up of three elements. It's made up of these three core elements of action, connection, and deviation. So that's sort of the beginning of my thinking on the terminology. So how does this apply to you and your creative type, or what type of creative person you are? Well, the three creative elements can manifest themselves in you in different strengths. So you can be kind of weak in action. It's hard for you, it's hard for me. I'm definitely weak in action, where if I don't have something to help propel me forward, I'm inert. Not a nerd, but I suffer from inertia. And you need something to give you that momentum. You need something to propel you forward. So you can have mid-strength in something, and then you can be really strong in one of the dimensions as well. For instance, deviation. So there's low, mid, and high strength, depending on the individual. If, as I said, if you suffer from low action strength, then you have trouble breaking through barriers, and you need to practice more. You need to get better and get into a routine. If you're weaker in connection, it means that you don't quite know where to focus or what you should learn about, and you need to learn more and start making more and better associations to help you with that. If you're weaker in deviation or originality or being able to think outside of the box, it means that you cannot overcome the ordinary, and you need to experiment more to come up with different results. So that's the low strength in those different elements. Mid-strength elements, I call them flavors because I'm inspired by quantum physics and the idea of quarks that have different flavors, like strange and charmed and things like that. So the mid elements of creativity have flavor. So action, for instance, if you're sort of mid-strength action, it means that you're an energetic flavor. So you're capable of some momentum, but you still have issues turning that into a routine. With connection, it's a curious flavor because you have interest, but you might not have full understanding. So you have interest, but you're capable of learning. And then mid-deviation, I call that the playful flavor. That's where you're willing to experiment, and I guess experiment like a child in a joyful way, where you can look at something or look at a problem and think about it in that playful manner where you can freely associate and experiment. So your action can evolve. You can have a low-strength action, and you can slowly evolve it to mid-strength or high-strength through practice and routine. With connection, you can move from low to high through association and a bigger, deeper understanding of things. And with deviation, you can move from low-strength deviation through to mid-strength and high strength through experimentation and expression. So we've been repeating, or I've been repeating some of these same things over and over. Action, connection, deviation. When you have them in the high strength, it means that you're pretty solid. You've got a pretty good handle on those three different pieces. So when you combine these elements with each other in various strengths, you get the creative types. So I'm going to go through, so here's an example of some different creative types where you might have a mid-strength in action, be really strong in connection, and weak in deviation and original ideas, and that would have its own particular type. Now, I've created, using the amazing programming language called Google Forms, which is really not the best thing to program in. I've created something that's in alpha because I don't want to even call it beta yet. It's not really ready for prime time. But you can still go to createmorebetterdifferent.com/test and answer 30 questions. There's 10 questions about action, 10 questions about connection, 10 questions about deviation, and figure out whether you score low, medium, or high in those three elements. And then it puts it together for you and gives you a brief little synopsis of what your creative type might be. And the 8 basic creative types that arise from that are everything from the taker, who's weak in all three, to the maker, who's really strong in all three, and then everything in between. And no one is better than the other. It's not, I know I call it a creative evolution where you're trying to grow from a taker to a maker, but everywhere in between, it doesn't mean that you're better or worse than anyone else. It just means that you're different and that you have different challenges. It's like saying, you know, I might be better at long distance running than I am at sprinting. That doesn't mean that I'm not good at life. So I'm just going to take you through these 8 different types fairly quickly. The taker, also known as the consumer, is someone that feels more comfortable taking in information than actually creating things. They need to practice and associate and experiment to get anywhere. They fully succumb to inertia, but if they have the desire or the drive to be more, better, or different, then they just need a patient mentor or someone that can help them create a full toolkit to give them and empower them to start moving forward and start evolving. The mimic, also known as the Xerox, someone very strong in action, someone that has been practicing and honing one particular skill, but hasn't necessarily learned how that connects to different things or is particularly original about it. But that is often, designers often start out as mimics. Or if you look at someone like the classic painters who would have a patron pay them to learn, they would work on a style copying the masters, and they would just get absolutely perfect at their craft first, and then start to understand how it connects to society or how that connects to other people. And then that evolved their connection skills. Then they evolved their deviation skills by going, okay, I'm really good at this craft. Now how do I express it from a personal perspective? But mimic is a great place to start. Some people go the geek route, which is the empath, where they're really strong in learning. They don't do a lot, but they're studying a lot. They're going deep on things. They're becoming an expert in a particular field. And from there, they can also expand. We all know geeks and empaths. The crazy or the wild card, these are the people that are really passionate and expressive, and they have ideas that often don't relate to anything that's being talked about. We've all been in a brainstorming session, or maybe some of us have, where there's always one guy who's really, really excited, and he comes up with these ideas, and they have nothing to do with the project or what you need to solve, but they're really cool. A little bit scattered, maybe disconnected, but they just need to be focused and aimed in the right direction, and then those crazy sort of wildcard ideas can actually be manipulated and used. And a crazy is often great in a creative team where you need someone to help you break out of the default thinking that you're all doing. The dreamer, strong in connection and deviation. The dreamer is someone that has original ideas, has a lot of knowledge in a particular area. They know how to freely associate, but they don't do a lot. They come up with ideas for projects, and I suffer from this in particular, where I come up with all kinds of ideas. Oh, we could do that, and that, but I don't act on them. And so me, as a dreamer, self-professed dreamer, need to practice more and build up momentum. And I have to use very specific tools to get past that and to strengthen my action. The thing that I find strengthens my action the most is called deadlines. So when I'm told you're speaking at Codemotion on March the 22nd, and you have to have something ready to show people, then I sit down and I spend my time creating these slides. But before that, I just think, oh, I've got all these great ideas, and I could do that, and I could do that. But this makes it real and solidifies it, and deadlines is a great tool. Outsider, also known as the rebel, these are people that really strong in action. They're always doing things, and they have a real original sense of who they are and how to express it, and they have no trouble being deviants. They use their intuition. It's like the punk rocker who decides they're going to start a band, and they don't know how to play the guitar. But there's no problem there. They're just going to do it. They're just going to do it, and they're going to do it until they know and eventually evolve their connection skills. But they have no trouble getting things started or being as original as they need to be. And then you've finally got the producer, who's somebody that gets it, they understand it, and they know how to get things done. And they're not particularly original in the way that they approach it, but they know exactly how to take it from start to finish, and they know how it all works, and they know how it all connects. These are amazing people to have in your corner if you're a mimic or an empath or someone that needs to help you move things forward. And then the maker is usually someone that's more established. I don't know if any of you have read Malcolm Gladwell's book where he talks about, I think it's called Outlier, where he talks about the 10,000 hour rule, or you may have heard that to become really, really good at something, to be considered a genius or an expert, you need to put in about 10,000 hours of work, which is about 8 hours a day for about 10 years before you're really, really good at it. The maker is usually somebody that has put in a lot of time, or it's a little child, but it's someone that has put in a lot of time and has found a balance between connection and action and deviation. So, as I said before, each one of these creative types can be flavored slightly. So you could be a curious taker, someone that's working on their connection skills. You could be an energetic empath, someone that's a real nerd in a particular subject, and you're just starting to get the tools together to build your momentum and get over your procrastination. So that it breaks out into about 27 different creative types in total that are more nuanced. But the 8 that I told you about are the core basic creative types. So if you go to the createmorebetterdifferent.com/test, you can find out which one of those you are. And you can evolve your path. As I said, you can skip and jump all over the place. You can move forward, you can regress, and sometimes you need to shift into a different creative mode than is your default. For instance, I am a self-professed dreamer, but when I do need to get things done, I can become a more energetic dreamer and boost my action skills through things like deadlines, etc. Sorry about that. So how do we evolve our skills? How do we take those action, connection, and deviation elements in our creative type and move them forward, strengthen them to be able to create more, better, different? So that's done through tools. And I like to say it's not how creative you are, it's how you are creative. How do you approach creativity? That's what makes a difference. That's what's going to affect change in what you do and allow you to do more, better, different. So the exercises are designed to strengthen your weaker elements and evolve your creative type. So your Creative Toolkit consists of 6 things based on action, connection, and deviation. You've got your quick exercises that are designed to really quickly do what they need to do. And then you've got your lifelong practices, which really, really end up honing and strengthening those elements. So let's start with action. Action has the quick element of dynamite and the slow tool of the chisel. And the idea there is that you need to move mountains. You procrastinate, you need to move mountains. Well, you can do 2 things. You can either blow up the mountain, which you can do very, very quickly, and boom, you're through it, and you can get to your task, and you can get through that procrastination. Or you can use the chisel, which is every day for the rest of your life, you build a tunnel, and you chip away at that until you're through, and by the time you're through, you've made something permanent that's going to last and help you every time. Because you blow up the mountain, you got rubble everywhere, and then you come to another mountain. I love this quote from Barbara Yulin, who says, if you want to be a writer, you have to write. So that's about action. If you want to do what you want to do, you have to do it. Just makes sense. So evolving your action through practice and routine. Practice is the dynamite. Routine are the chisels. So dynamite. There's all kinds of tools you can use, and I'm just going to, I have very little time, so I'm just going to talk about one small tool for each section. But dynamite, you can use things like, you need to get over procrastination. You can use streaming, deadlines, like I talked about, the law of 1%, or 10 ideas in 10 minutes. 10 ideas in 10 minutes, really quickly, is just you impose a deadline on yourself of 10 minutes. You give yourself 10 minutes of uninterrupted time to solve a problem or come up with an idea. But you have to come up with 10 ideas instead of just 1. And you have 1 minute for each one, and you need to write them all down. You need to actually, the best way to start it is to write down your worst ideas first, the terrible ideas, the ones that you know you're never actually going to do, but you kind of get them out of your head and get them out of the way. That works really well to get a project or get an idea started. So 10 ideas in 10 minutes is a little piece of dynamite to move you forward. The chisels are things like Ben Franklin's foundation. He had a list of things that he would do every day. He had a routine. Chisel's basically another word for saying a routine, where he'd wake up every morning, he would say, what good shall I do this day? And at the end of the day, he would say, what good did I do this day? And he'd reflect on it, and obviously he did a lot of stuff. 10,000 boxes I talked about is just checking off those 10,000 hours so that you make sure that you're going to get to become a genius at something. The 10-minute wedge, the filament test, all of these I talk about at length in workshops. But the 10-minute wedge, another thing that's very simple, give yourself an extra 10 minutes every day. Go to bed 10 minutes later, or carve off a 10-minute chunk where you're not watching a sitcom or something on TV, and make that space and that time sacred. Find a space as well, like whether it's a desk or a corner or something, and make that your creative space. And every day, for 10 minutes, at a specific time, go there and practice your craft. Set a timer if you need to, because you don't have enough time. And then, because you start doing that every day, you start to turn it into a routine. And that 10-minute, I call it a wedge, because it'll turn into 11 and 12, and you'll start enjoying that time more, because now you're actually doing something and you're turning it into a routine, and eventually that will widen until you are doing it and sacrificing other things in your life that aren't as important as the creative things that you want to get done. So let's move on to connection. We have 2 more to cover. The connection challenge is about finding a focus so you know what to study, what to learn about. This quote by Louis Pasteur is one of my favorites, that chance favors a prepared mind, which means that the things that you come across in your life, you can make better associations if you know what you want to associate them with. So how do we evolve connection? Well, that's through association and understanding. So the first one for associations, to boost the sort of quick tool for making connections, I call lassos, and the other ones are called nets. But lassos are things like story dice, or all kinds of little exercises, but I'll just give you one. Story dice are great. You can actually buy Rory's story dice, or you could just create a random jar filled with little pictures, but you pull them out or you roll the dice and you get 6 little images, and what you need to do is come up with a story or an idea or a thought that connects all these different elements together. It really helps in terms of association. So here you've got a little keyhole and a building and the scales of justice and a bee and an eye and a flower. Well, how can you make all those things relate to one another in a simple little story that uses all of the elements? Nets, this is for moving from association to understanding. This is the hardcore stuff, like doing research and capturing all of your thoughts and making sure that you catalog them. Connect the thoughts is another way of saying mind mapping. But the focus 5, so here's one to help when you're about to do a project. This is like a creative brief in advertising. Who's your audience? What is the key message of what you want to get across? Where do you want this to net out? So what is your goal? And when is it due? When do you want to have it finished so that you actually get it done? And then why do you care about it? What's the purpose? So those 5 things, like who, what, where, when, why, can really help to get you to an understanding of what it is you're trying to accomplish. And lastly, deviation. Strengthening deviation is about overcoming the ordinary. So here's a great quote. Art is the authentic expression of any and all individuality. So it comes from you, and when it comes from you, truthfully, it is art. It is its own thing. It is creativity. So how do you evolve deviation? Well, the quick ones are lenses, where you put on a lens and you can look at something differently and get a different perspective right away. Misassociationalism, which is a fancy word I made up for lying and making stuff up. Random word, which is applying a random word to a situation and looking at its characteristics and then seeing how things might change. One of my favorites is called Through the Looking Glass, where you try to not solve the problem, you actually try to make the problem worse. How can I ensure that this project will fail? And then you write down all these ideas of why and how you can make that the worst possible project that it could ever be. And when you're done coming up with all those ideas, which is often really fun, and easier to do because people are less judgmental about it in a group, then you look at those different things that you've decided are going to cause failure, and you flip it and you decide to figure out potential solutions to all of the problems that you've now set up for yourself. And then lastly, blindfolds, which is about being able to see inward instead of just look at things with a different lens. It's about expressing yourself and learning who you are and how you are creative, how you create. It's as simple as things like meditation and taking time out of your life. So that John Cunios guy that I talked about, he's done all these studies where he basically can prove that if you just sit down and close your eyes for 2 minutes and don't think about anything, you're better prepared for insight. You will come up with ideas faster, better ideas faster, if you just close your eyes for 2 minutes and don't think about something. It's crazy, but it's true. It's been proven by science. So take this toolkit then allows you to have a perspective to take any exercises or practices that you come across in the thousands and thousands of books about creativity and be able to apply them to you and put them into your creative toolkit as quick or slow bits. So the creative framework should continue to help you create more, better, and different. And I think the time is up. So the recap is creativity is the act of connecting things in unexpected ways. There are 3 creative elements of action, connection, and deviation of varying strengths that come in 8 different creative types with different flavors: curious, playful, and energetic. And the weaker elements can be evolved by using tools like Dynamite, etc., that you can put into your creative toolkit and use them to break barriers, find focus, and overcome the ordinary to create more, better, and different. So that's 8 hours and 40 minutes, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you want to know any more about this or the work that I'm doing, you can go to createmorebetterdifferent.com and check it out. There's a wiki that's just been started. There's blog posts, a newsletter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you so much.
Codemotion.